What's going on, everybody? I am here to do a review for the latest horror flick, Thanksgiving. And let me just tell you right here, this might be the underrated horror flick of the year. I thoroughly enjoyed this movie, and it wasn't even a movie I planned on seeing until I saw a couple of reviews. I kind of broke my rule of looking at reviews for movies that I want to see before actually going to go and see it. But since this was a movie I didn't want to go see initially, because I didn't know how to receive it based on some of the trailers or the footage, I watched one review in particular with no spoilers, and I was impressed with what they had to say, and I have to say that I agree with everything that they said and then some. So basically, the movie Thanksgiving synopsis reads as: after a Black Friday riot ends in tragedy, a mysterious Thanksgiving-inspired killer terrorizes Plymouth, Massachusetts, the birthplace of the infamous holiday. I think that's actually pretty interesting that they have the movie take place in the very same place in which the holiday in which the movie is surrounded around actually occurs in. So the fact that they're pretty much on theme with that says a lot, and I would say that's very on par. Now, let me just start off saying this. I think I have more pros with this movie than I have cons. As a matter of fact, I wrote down all of my pros, and I don't think I have any cons. I might have a con somewhere along the line, but I'm gonna be honest with you. It wasn't really anything wrong with this movie. It might be something here and there, but nothing that'll completely take you out of the movie or make you dislike the movie. So with that being said, let me go down and list the the pros that I have for this particular movie. The first one is the opening. The opening sequence of this movie was so extremely violent in a way that you probably wouldn't expect. Let's just put it this way. There's a reason why myself and others do not engage in Black Friday opportunities. If we do want to do some quick shopping and get a good sale, save it for Cyber Monday, where we are in the comfort of our own home and in front of a electronic device where we can just look something up online, and if we see a good sale that we want, we go ahead and purchase it. Because that opening sequence with the Black Friday shoppers was like feeding time at the damn zoo all over a device they could have probably just got off of Amazon. It's just crazy how people just go crazy for a simple device like that, and how people go completely rampant. And the thing is, it's so realistic, because if you look on YouTube of Black Fridays from years ago, it used to look like straight up stampedes and people getting into fights, people getting badly injured, some people dying, believe it or not. It's gotten that bad. Over the years though, lately, it's toned down quite a bit because of online shopping. Back then, it wasn't like a lot of online shopping, so it forced you to have to actually go to the store and actually purchase whatever it is that you were going to buy for a particular discounted price. The next thing that was awesome about this movie was the kills. The kills in this movie were so extremely graphic and actually kind of creative. I mean, think about it. The theme is Thanksgiving, so I thought it was dope that the killer used actual objects that you would indeed, like the trailer suggests, find on a Thanksgiving table as a way to murder their victims in a way that, you know, is not the conventional way of what a killer would do, as far as shooting them or stabbing them with a knife, even though a knife is something that you could find on a Thanksgiving table if you're carving something. So I like that they use certain things, and I'm sure, like, if you see the trailer, as you see it running through here, you can actually see one clip where one girl gets stabbed in the ears with a corn holder. Like, that's insane. Like, when that happens, and, you know, seeing that on the big screen, it's like, oh my God, I couldn't even imagine something like that actually happening and like going into your ears like that and just causing your ears to ring. Even if you was to make it out of a situation like that, your hearing is done. It's pretty much damaged. You're going to be hearing ringing for quite some time if your ears even slightly heal just a little bit. But I like the fact that they were able to get really creative with the kills and how gory a lot of them were. Like, it was one in particular, without me giving away a spoiler, that involved a dumpster. I'm just going to leave it right there. It was that graphic. The next one that I liked is the jump scares. The jump scares in this movie were pretty good. You know, I think every jump scare that they inserted in that movie probably had me, and it's crazy because some things happened in this movie that gave me a jump scare that wasn't even a jump scare, because I think it's because you were kind of expecting or not expecting a jump scare to happen, but then when it ended up happening, it actually did deliver. Because sometimes they throw jump scares in there because maybe the movie isn't scary enough without them, and I feel like if a lot of movies do that, or a lot of horror movies do the jump scare thing too much, that takes away from the horror element that the movie is supposed to and try to convey. The next thing that I liked is the setting. I like that, again, and I think I mentioned this earlier, that it's set in Massachusetts, in Plymouth, Massachusetts, where the birthplace of Thanksgiving apparently happened. I like that the production design, it looks kind of like gloomy and everything like that, because it's supposed to be the setting. You get the idea that it is the fall. You can see the brown and red and yellow leaves. It gives the vibe of fall, because sometimes some movies will shoot and it's supposed to happen in a particular season, and then, you know, they might not shoot it at a particular time, so, and then they have to try to make it look like it is. But if they are able to film a movie in the season that it's supposed to be set in, that would be dope. Like, say for example, if this movie actually takes place in the fall, I wonder, did they start production on this movie in the fall of last year and then just, you know, did the editing process and then released it this year? Which, of course, if they did, that was actually very smart on their part. So I really did like the setting. I like the production design of it all. It actually gave you the feel that it is Thanksgiving, it is the fall. The people, you know, they were in, you know, Massachusetts, so that actually leads me into the cast and the acting. I don't know if they had a dialect coach, but, you know, I recognize a couple of the actors, and I've heard them talk in other roles and talk in interviews, and they had to throw on that thick Boston, that thick Massachusetts accent. Think of the characters off of Family Guy and how do they sound. So I could actually hear the Massachusetts accent come through with some of the people. Some of it was a little bit kind of forced. If I had to give one nitpick, I feel like some of the accents that the actors were putting on were kind of forced. But then again, I'm not from Massachusetts, and anyone from Massachusetts who has been there, y'all can let me know down in the comments if y'all seen the movie and tell me, were those accents pretty much on par? But for me, I feel like some of them were a little bit forced. Another thing I liked about this movie was the plot twist. This movie had a very good plot twist, and it actually, speaking of the plot twist, it made when you got the plot twist and found out who the killer was, then it found out what their motive was, then you say, okay, now I see why they're doing what it is they're doing. It doesn't mean they are right in what they're doing, but you can understand why the killer is going out of their way to do what it is that they're doing. And I'm gonna be honest, they had me and most of this audience thinking that one person was the particular killer or was the killer, but then they threw us for a loop and we found out it was somebody else. And because I'm gonna be honest, when they show who we thought was the killer, I was like, I knew it was him. I heard a lot of people say in the audience with me, I knew it was him. Then we found out it wasn't him and that it was somebody else. But then when they give the plot twist and the motive as to why they did it, it's like, oh, okay, now it makes sense of why they're doing what it is that they're doing. And that's what I like. I like when in movies the killer has a motive. I don't like it when they're just going around killing just for the sake of killing, because then it's like, why are you doing this? There has to be a reason as to why you're doing this, other than you just being some kind of psychotic freak. The other thing that I liked was something that I'm inserting in here when it comes to horror movies, and that was breaking the stereotype. In this movie, there's only one black character, and there's always this stereotype where in horror movies you might have that one black character that, you know, is not going to make it. But in this movie, they broke the stereotype. I'm glad that they did. I'm glad this person actually made it to the end and actually was trying to fight, you know, back and everything like that. Because a lot of times what they also do in these movies, when it comes to horror movies, they love to make the black person the sacrificial lamb. Like, you know, I'll sacrifice myself so my friends who happen to be not in black, mainly also always PC, get away. But They almost kind of did it with the character, but I'm glad that they decided not to. So I'm glad that they broke the stereotype with the one black character in this movie. The next thing that I liked is more from the audience perspective. I've told y'all before, if y'all ever want to watch a horror movie and have fun with it, watch it with a bunch of black folks. I'm telling you right now, it is nothing like it. The movie I went to was almost completely sold out. It was a very, very black crowd in there. It was a couple of non-black folks in there, but we were overwhelmingly in there. And I'm telling you right now, it's nothing like it. You know, we can be so extra sometimes. We be yelling at the screen, telling them don't do this and don't do that, because we are telling it from the experience, from where we are at, like what we would not do. But then again, we're not the ones writing the film. And I think that's another reason why a lot of black people probably like that movie that came out earlier a couple months ago in June called The Blackening, which was basically a parody making fun of black people in horror movies and how we would react and respond to certain situations should we be in a horror movie. But I'm glad that the audience experience that I had with this movie was on point. Another thing that I liked about this movie is that it had a nostalgia feel to it, where you could, it was one movie in particular, I'm not going to say what it is, but it's a horror movie that came out in the 90s that reminded me with some of the things that was happening in the movie, kind of reminded me of this other horror movie. I don't want to say what it is because then it'll take away from it, and I want to see if people are going to figure out what horror movie from the 90s, that's the only clue you're going to get, kind of reminds me of it. Like, it was one particular scene with a parade, it made me think of it. That one scene made me think of that one movie because there was a correlation there. I wonder if they pulled from that in order to make that particular scene work. If they did, that was actually pretty smart. And they probably don't think most people will catch it, but I definitely caught it, if that's the route they were going. Now, word is that they made this film based off of an old fan trailer that someone made years ago, and I mean years ago, like in the early days of YouTube, and put it up there about a killer killing people during Thanksgiving. That's the word, that's what it is. If that is indeed true, kudos to the people for using someone's idea, I'm sure with their consent and permission. I'm sure they allowed them to help them work on the film, and expanding it from that and turning it into a full-length feature film. That just shows you right there, you don't always need to go to Hollywood to get these big execs to come up with a process like this. And I like that because that means that this is an original piece. This is not something that's been adapted. It's not something that has been remade. Again, going back to my initial point, they might have pulled something from old, but they're not full blown giving a reboot. That's what I really loved about that, because that, like I said, is something that I did hear, that they did use an old fan trailer as inspiration to make this movie into a full-length film. Another thing that I liked about this movie, going back to when I was talking about the nostalgia factor a couple minutes ago, is that I loved how grounded this movie is. It's been a while since we've gotten an original slasher type of movie. I guess you can throw Scream in there, but Scream 6, which came out earlier this year that I did review on my channel, go and check it out if you haven't, is a part of an ongoing series that's been going on since the 90s. So it's not an original film anymore. It's just ongoing pieces to an original story that started way back when. And it just shows that you can make horror movies without having to do all the supernatural or the demonic possession type of film. Because I think every other movie that came out this year that falls under the category or genre of horror dealt with some kind of a possession or some kind of a ghost or something of the supernatural. Whereas this one and Scream 6 were like the only two slasher type movies. If there was any other, please let me know. But it's good to know that you can still get your point across without having to do the same typical thing. Not saying that there's anything wrong with the type of horror films that I just mentioned, but it's good to know that there still can be grounded material that can be made that can still scare and capture audiences, much like they did back in the day. And the last thing that I wanted to say about this movie is, finally they made a horror movie around Thanksgiving. For years I was wondering and saying to myself, when are they going to make a horror movie around Thanksgiving? And then a couple months ago when they released the trailer, I was like, somebody out there has been reading my thoughts. Because I had wondered for so long, why they have never made a Thanksgiving horror themed movie. I mean, how many Christmas horror themed movies have we received? They've even started going into action films when it comes to Christmas movies. We've got a Valentine's Day movie, ironically called Valentine. You know, we had The Purge, was it election year? They released it on 4th of July weekend. I mean, well, I like that they finally made a horror film around Thanksgiving. It makes you wonder, what holiday are they going to do next with the horror theme? I want to know from y'all down below in the comments, what holiday would you choose for them to make as a horror themed movie? But all in all, I really did enjoy this movie. Like I said, I didn't really have any cons except for them thick forced Boston or Plymouth, Massachusetts accents that some of them were doing. Some was like, y'all can scale it back a little bit. But honestly, I really had a lot of fun with this movie. I would definitely check it out if I were you. Definitely a underrated horror movie of this year. Again, it's one of those films that you kind of like were iffy about. You didn't know how to receive it. But then once you watch it, it turns out that it wasn't bad. It actually was pretty good. But y'all let me know what y'all think down in the comments, and I'll talk to you in the next one.